Welcome back to the new adventures of the monad. If you remember back to an earlier presentation, it was mentioned that when the Manu arrived on the shores of the inland Gobi Sea a few years prior to the second major destruction of Atlantis in 75,025 BCE, he subsequently distributed his followers into 4 groups and assigned them each to a valley. There they stayed for a considerable period. About 40,000 BCE, the work of developing the 4 sub-races in the 4 valleys had now to begin. The Manu selected from the band of servers who had stayed with him in the city of the bridge. These servers had been developing in the first example of the Aryan civilization found in this city. A few families which were willing to act as pioneers left the city of the bridge and went into the wilderness to found his new colony. In the 3rd generation, Moya and Kuthumi took birth among the descendants of these pioneers. Other developed monads with specialized skills incarnated into this community to develop specific characteristics in the nascent subrace. When highly developed monads incarnate at the beginning of a subrace cycle, the type exemplified by this subrace is seen at its best, and the race has its golden age. Younger monads then come in, but they are of course unable to maintain the same high standard. What you are seeing here is a mirror of the Yuga cycle. The pioneers come in and set up shop, and things go steadily downhill from there until it cycles back to a peak before starting a new cycle. Those who remained behind in the city of the bridge thought the people who went into the valley very foolish, for the existing civilization in the city was a very fine one, and there seemed to be no sense in going off to make a new one in an unreclaimed valley. Moreover, the new religion followed by the valley dwellers seemed quite unnecessary and inferior to the existing religion. For some centuries, the people in the valley increased and multiplied, the careful genetic selection proceeding until in 40,000 BCE, the Manu decided to send them out into the world. Under the leadership of Moya, they retraced the steps of their predecessors to Arabia, with the intention of Aryanizing the Arabs who, of all the Atlanteans, were nearest to the possession of the new characteristics wanted in the second subrace. What this shows us is that if you think of Atlantis somewhere else, usually on an island, you are not seeing how human evolution occurs. The standard myth is that there was a group of people somewhere who were wise and beautiful, but seemed to lose their way. They sank beneath the waves, and then the 5th root race took off. What esoteric investigations reveal to us is that the Atlantean 4th root race monads were spread over the globe. It was by selecting a group of them from the 3 sub-races and then selectively breeding them that the Manu of the next root race, in our case Vaivasvata Manu, was able to select characteristics in the new root race that would favor the functioning of the mind over that of the emotions. Subsequently, sub-races were developed and then sent out to colonize and mix with the indigenous 4th root race inhabitants of the lands they moved into, and from this sprang new civilizations and cultures, each with its specific set of religious practices, always given to them by the Bodhisattva. Back to our story. Later, the Manu in person took the lead of his forces and obtained permission from a strong and friendly power, then ruling in what is now Persia and Mesopotamia, to march his hosts along a carefully guarded route. In this migration, about 150,000 men, of fighting age only, were taken together with some 100,000 women and children. 2 years previously, the Manu had prepared the Arabs for his coming by sending messengers. After initial opposition and trouble, the Arab chief allowed the visitors to settle in a great desolate valley on the borders of his territory. In a short time, they had the whole valley irrigated, with a stream flowing down the middle of it. Within a year, the land was cultivated and good crops were obtained. In 3 years, they were prosperous and self-supporting. The Arab chief, becoming jealous, endeavored to induce the Manu to join him in attacking a neighboring enemy. The Manu refused, whereupon the Arab joined with his one-time enemy and tried to exterminate the newcomers. The Manu, however, defeated and slew them both and made himself ruler over their combined states. The moral of the story: don't mess with the Manu. You just don't know who you are up against. The defeated peoples soon became better off under the Manu, who promptly proceeded to Aryanize them. His kingdom prospered and grew stronger as he absorbed tribe after tribe, usually without bloodshed and with their consent. Before his death, 40 years later, he ruled the upper half of Arabia. The southern half held aloof because of a religious fanatic who took as his guiding principle the directions given by the Manu in the outward journey from the Atlantean heartland to the Gobi Sea, tens of thousands of years earlier. At this time, and this was some considerable time ago, the Manu forbade his followers to intermarry with outsiders. The southern tribes thus united to oppose their leader, who was now reincarnated, making his original order as to the purity of their race a rallying cry against him. The Manu had intended to Aryanize these descendants of his old followers, but the idea that they were a chosen people was held by them so strongly that they rejected his overtures. It will be recollected that it is from these people that the Jews were descended, as we shall see presently in more detail. While this long struggle was going on, the Bodhisattva, the future Gautama Buddha, came to the second subrace to give it a new religion, which he had been teaching in Egypt as a reform to the ancient faith currently prevailing. At this time, about 40,000 BCE, an Atlantean empire was ruling in Egypt. It had attained a very high state of civilization. It had immense temples, a very ornate set of rituals, and elaborate religious teachings. The Egyptians were profoundly religious as well as psychic. They were Atlantean after all. They held gorgeous religious processions and ceremonies pulsating with reality, whole multitudes being carried away with passionate emotion, a very Atlantean characteristic, as they mourned, for example, the death of Osiris and called him to return. The Bodhisattva came to his people as Tihuti or Thoth, called later by the Greeks Hermes. His doctrine was that of inner light. The light that lighteth every man, that cometh into the world, was a phrase of his, echoed in the later Christian Gospels. I am that light, he bade them repeat. That light am I. That light is the true passion. The light is hidden everywhere. It is in every rock and in every stone. The light is the life of humanity. To every human, though there are glorious ceremonies, though there are many duties of the priest to do, and in many a way in which he should help humanity, that light is nearer than aught else, within their very heart. For every person, reality is nearer than any ceremony, for a person only has to turn inwards, and then will they see the light. That is the object of every ceremony, and ceremonies should not be done away with. For I come not to destroy, but to fulfill. When a man knows he goes beyond the ceremony, he goes to Osiris. He goes to the light Amun-Ra, from which all came forth, to which all shall return. Those were the lofty words which were repeated by Christ's Maitreya, with as little success as I suspect the Buddha had. And again, the Buddha said, Osiris is in the heavens, but Osiris is also in the very heart of humanity. When Osiris in the heart knows Osiris in the heavens, then humanity becomes God, and Osiris, once rent into fragments, again becomes one. To the pharaoh, the monarch, he gave the motto, "Look to the light, for only as the king sees the light in the heart of each can he rule well." To the people he gave the motto, "Thou art the light, let that light shine." This motto was inscribed on a temple pylon, doors of houses, and on models of pylons made of precious metal and clay. Another favorite motto was, "Follow the light," and this became later, "Follow the king." People said of their dead, "He has gone to the light." From Egypt, as has been said, the Bodhisattva went to Arabia to teach his doctrine to the second subrace. Returning to the history of the second subrace, after some centuries, a more ambitious ruler succeeded to the throne, marched down to the ocean, and proclaimed himself emperor of all Arabia. This leads us back to the Jews and what they got up to next. See you in the next presentation. Thank you.